Kirkwood is a stone's throw from the city of Decatur, and it was really hit hard not that long ago. To see Kirkwood today is a really amazing transformation in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it instantly became the largest historic district in the state of Georgia.
Which is interesting because the Kirkwood Business Owners Association, I hear, is the largest business owners association in the city.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting.
Well, they put up a hell of a wine stroll.
Yeah. Welcome back to ATL, All Things Local. I'm one of your hosts, Jeffy, and I'm here with
one of your hosts, Adam.
Mincy. Nice to see you, Adam.
Good to see you, Goddard.
What are we talking about today?
Today, we were talking about a neighborhood that I was kind of nervous to talk about, just because it has so much history and it feels like almost like a textbook if you were to write everything down.
Yeah, we almost didn't record this because I was worried that I needed more time to prepare.
You know, it's like having a baby. I don't know if you'll ever really be prepared. But we're talking about Kirkwood neighborhood here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Sunny Kirkwood.
Kirkwood is located next to Edgewood and Decatur. It is also backs up to the trail or the train line. That would be the CSX lines and what used to be the Georgia Railroad, MARTA as well.
It's in the outer reaches of the city of Atlanta, right before you reach the Decaturs of the world.
That's right. And then I guess the south side's what cutoff is 20?
That's a question I had. If the neighborhood of Kirkwood really ended there before the interstate.
Yeah.
Or if it kind of bled over and the interstate just said, okay, whatever.
Yeah, there is a small community called Parkview that I would include within Kirkwood, but very small neighborhood. But yeah, Kirkwood has a lot of rich history.
Yeah, it's a neighborhood I heard about as a kid growing up in Metro Atlanta. Yeah, Hosea Williams has a street named after him there. He was in the news a lot with Feed the Hungry and the other scandalous reasons to be in the news. He was a popular figure in Atlanta. He's done a lot of great things. So Kirkwood has kind of always been around. It's very conveniently located to a lot of things, but it has such a complicated history.
It does. And so, you know, like many neighborhoods here in Atlanta, it all started when we took Creek Indian land and sold it off in the Georgia Land Lottery. And one of the primary buyers for Kirkwood was a dairy farmer from Monticello, Georgia, in Jasper County, named Jesse Clay, and that's where he gets his Clay Street, exactly. Yeah, 850 acres dairy farm, and it really kind of remained farmland for a long time. There wasn't a ton of development that happened there because when the railroad came through, it wasn't necessarily a stop or a place, you know, they call it a whistle blow stop. I guess that means you whistle and run down the train. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna blow the whistle.
Yeah.
So you got to run quick.
Yeah, but it wasn't until I guess the next major event would probably be the Civil War.
And what was Kirkwood like when the Civil War took place? Because Kirkwood is one of those neighborhoods that comes to mind when I think of historic markers and places where people with metal detectors go. Yeah, find old artifacts. But what was it like when the war happened? There's all that east side of Atlanta is a huge just strip of historic markers up and down Memorial Drive and everything. And a lot of those streets like Clay Street.
Yeah.
And that was pretty hilly. Some hills are usually a strategic advantage. So that may have come into play with that.
Yeah. And there's a sign right at the end of Clay Street and Memorial that says the Battle of Atlanta begins here. And, you know,
a single shot.
With a single shot. Yeah. Well, I mean, the way that it kind of goes is that Battle of Atlanta really cleared the path for Sherman to come in. It took a major part of the railroad away from the Confederate soldiers. The Battle of Atlanta, you know, there were 75,000 U.S. Union Army soldiers, 40,000 Confederate. Casualties for the Confederate is over 5,500, 3,700. So yes, there's a lot of gun shells and all sorts of stuff that you can kind of find around there. You know, the Union Artillery Walker's Corps, they fired from Clay's Cemetery, which is where Jesse Clay's family was. It's a small cemetery, and kind of moved that troop back as another artillery is fighting the battle kind of over near where Freedom Park is. And so it's all happening, you know. Copenhagen, yes. And so it's a unique thing, but I saw a map and maybe we can find this and it just looks like all of these, you know, Union and Confederate artilleries are battling different ways and directions. It's a pretty interesting thing.
At that point, Clay Street is right there. but Clay Street did not exist at that time. It was just farmland.
Probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. Or sparsely, charted kind of area.
Right.
But the Kirkwood urban forest is 6 or 7 acres, tucked right in there. You would not know it unless you had Google Maps.
That's right.
Or lived there.
Yeah, lived there and go down. What is the street that it's on?
It's Warren. It's between Clay and Dearborn. It's at the end of the short part of Rogers.
Yeah.
And then I think the walking trail may come off Dearborn. But yeah, a great thing. Not something that people come from all over to see, but it's a big chunk of land in a densely populated area. I mean, dense in Atlanta terms is not like dense in Manhattan terms, but you would think in a city like Atlanta with the pressures to develop and build and increase density that things like this Kirkwood or urban forest might not exist. So I think it's a real gem to have there. And I'm curious about the history and why maybe we could figure out that area did not get developed. Why didn't Rogers go all the way down? Maybe it has to do with the original owners or some of that land. A lot of times when landowners or farmers had land, they would sell off a good bit, but they would keep like the family homestead.
Yeah.
And it was usually a nice piece.
Yeah. Well, we also are still searching for, and maybe someone out there knows exactly where this is. Gillian Park is where we kind of determined it was. One of the big benefits of Kirkwood was an artisan spring that was there. And Kirkwood was its own city, originally founded in 1899. And it finally really took its own city until 1904. And it was a destination for middle-class, white-collar workers to buy larger homes. There weren't really big lots, but they were larger homes. You see a lot of the 2.5-story, what we call the American Foursquare, prairie box. It's a pretty standard build. And once we'll put an image of one up on YouTube. And once you look at it, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I see those all over Kirkwood.
I think it's interesting because Kirkwood is one of the neighborhoods where you can really see the path, if you will, of the trolley line that served it. And if you look at the trolley line in Candler Park, for example, you can still see some of the rail lines sticking up through the asphalt at the intersection of Clifton. But that's just a straight run. It's a street that looks just like probably similar to this, how it looked then. But now around Kirkwood and this is up for debate. We'd love to hear what you guys think. Cone Park or Cohen Park? I always said Cone Park. Adam says Cohen Park.
I always say Cohen. Yeah. Cohen is
Coan. How would you pronounce it? That's up for debate. We'd love to hear what you guys think. But that around Cohen Park and then up the big, what is that, Woodbine
and Rogers right there. And that's where it follows Woodbine and makes that turn. Hardy Street is right there too. And that path's still there today. And that's where the Gilliam Park is, where I suspect the original spring was. And they used that other land to create that park. But it bends and then shoots down what is Hosea Williams today, was called Boulevard initially, which is a little confusing because we know Boulevard is another boulevard.
Yeah, another one. Out through that section of Kirkwood and over into what is now East Lake, you kind of had these big winding kind of streets. It felt like they were intentionally not making it a grid. It also kind of reminds me of kind of how Ponce de Leon winds through the parks there. Over, there's a section that has, what is the street called where it's divided east of downtown Kirkwood, if you will, before you get up to the intersection of 2nd Avenue. The streets that have been winding and cutting in and out. And I think it was to create more of a pleasurable feel.
I guess you mean like how Howard Street cuts over and it's not a direct, line.
Yeah, let me show you on the map here. Cottage Grove and all of that stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like they were intentionally trying to make everything not square and be nice to take a journey on the trolley out of the bustling downtown Atlanta at the time where you would go to work.
Yeah, well, I could definitely see that. I mean, it started with a very small commercial district and it's slowly grown over time. It did have a local market. Really, when the streetcar was put in the early 1900s, it really started to expand the commercial district of what is Kirkwood today. And then there's still new districts, like where Kirkwood Pub or whatever it's called is. There's still developments that are going in. Over time, it kind of increased and increased and increased until the well, until really the next phase of development. But before we got to there, we talk about the Reconstruction period in the U.S. was right after the Civil War, right? And I think it's important to note that this is still a city at this time, the city of Kirkwood. And there are some pretty influential people that made Kirkwood home. And Kirkwood was a little bit larger than we probably think it is today because it expanded into what we now know as Lake Claire. But General John B. Gordon, who is de facto also maybe the head of the Ku Klux Klan, we're not really exactly sure what his leadership within that was, but he traveled a lot through Georgia, and he was a U.S. senator and all of these things. He called Kirkwood home. And he also is still portrayed out in front of our state capitol. He's the statue, the Confederate statue that has him riding a horse. Yeah, it was put in like the 1907 or something like that, right? But they had a big push to make Kirkwood an all-white neighborhood. A lot of their marketing materials also spoke about this in a way. And, it's one of those neighborhoods. It had a post office pretty early on. And it was a little bit of a hub for the middle upper white class.
It was a suburb and a growing city. And like many things in Atlanta, transportation shaped it.
And I think the artisan spring water, the natural water, because a lot of Atlanta had been under scrutiny for, maybe.
I would assume that I can just envision some Kirkwood residents or people that lived in that area or wanted to develop the area saying, wow, we got this spring. Why don't we make a water system and start collecting taxes?
Yeah.
That would have been fun.
Yeah. Well, if you fast forward to 1922, Kirkwood is annexed into the city of Atlanta, and there was a large pushback for that by the local Kirkwood, city of Kirkwood at the time. They didn't want to be annexed because they didn't want to give away their
which begs the question. Something that we've talked about in a lot of other areas around Atlanta is that typically during or shortly after the Great Depression, the financial hardship of that caused areas to become annexed into some larger municipality like Atlanta.
Correct.
This one is not like that. And so why do we feel like there was pushback, but they still decided to be annexed even in the roaring 20s?
Yeah.
Before it all came crashing down.
I mean, I'm not really sure. I think the city of Atlanta definitely wanted it. They wanted the additional acreage of it. I think it was like 1,700 acres or something they were able to add. It did have the East Lake Victorian homes that Joel Hurt built that was commissioned by Asa Candler. So I'm sure, you're talking about a lot of people that had a lot of pull within the city to be able to.
That was the same time frame that you had a lot of the Druid Hills neighborhood being developed. There was a lot of action at that point.
And maybe that's part of it, is to just kind of make Atlanta bigger, and it's bigger for the South, right? So obviously a lot of this neighborhood developed in that housing boom that happened between the 1900s and the 1920s, which you can see bungalows, craftsmen's, those type of homes. We talked about the American Foursquare. After that, you also have a large disinvestment and blockbusting, which we don't talk a lot about after you get out of real estate courses.
Yeah, it's actually something that's discussed quite a bit. But I think we also had the post-war boom and a relatively stable suburban area of Atlanta for several decades,
right? And
at some point, white flight began.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not really at some point. I think it times up with, the desegregation of schools, Brown versus Board of Education.
Right.
And what is fascinating is Kirkwood's elementary school went from 500 white students in 1965 to what they say overnight. 1967, fast forward 2 years, less than 2 years, it dropped from 500 white students to 4. But the attendance stayed pretty much the same. It just had, within 2 years, made that drastic of a turnover.
Demographic shift.
All white to all black.
Really quickly.
Really quickly. Yeah. And so, and that includes 18 white teachers leave.
When I was in DeKalb public schools, we had, at the time it was called minority to majority, or M to M. It was the term used in the school to make sure students had access to the same level of education, they would move large groups of people on buses to areas that weren't their local school. And it did change the demographics. However, even with that big effort, you did not see the demographics of a school change like what we're talking about here in Kirkwood.
Yeah,
it was that is a big deal.
Yeah, and what probably felt like overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I'm curious what it would feel like to the people, regardless of race, what that change in a neighborhood demographic feels like, or what they think about it at the time.
Yeah. And then blockbusting, right? Mm-hmm. And that's essentially the, the fear mongering technique of telling you that your house is not going to be worth anything.
You need to sell now.
You have to sell now. You got to get out right now. Mm-hmm. And that was something that the National Association of Realtors used as a marketing technique to actually sell and move white families to the suburbs.
I asked a local resident about some of the facts we uncovered on researching Kirkwood, and specifically about that change in the schools in 1965. She mentioned a few things, and how her family lived in the area, and they were some of the last to move, and they didn't move far away, but that the real estate agent, there was apparently a very infamous one and apparently it only takes one, I guess, for the blockbustering kind of concept to take over, but that he was really working not only with the changes in racial demographic to use that as a tool to get more business, but also I-485, which we've talked about, which she specifically mentioned that people were afraid to put money into their homes all the way from Morningside all the way down past Little Five Points. Everyone was afraid to invest. And that sounds to me like if there's that public perception of what's going on, that kind of fear, it's very ripe for somebody to take advantage of them, especially if they're unscrupulous.
Yeah, and couple that with also redlining that's happening with the FHA and not writing loans for certain demographic areas. I mean, you're going to naturally create this perfect storm for decline in neighborhoods.
If you think about it, maybe from what it's like to be, it's hard for us today to imagine what it was like for underwriting guidelines and things like that to be based on something that seems so racially focused.
Yeah.
And so luckily we are beyond that. I'm kind of curious what it would feel like if you owned a piece of land in Kirkwood. Let's say that you are a white family that's been there for many years, and maybe you are welcoming of the demographic change. Maybe you have lots of African-American friends and family that visit, and the demographic change doesn't scare you, but with that demographic change, all of a sudden people won't be able to get financing to buy a home in your neighborhood. That just it's hard to imagine what that must have been like.
It is segregation by design. It is segregation by policy, really, right? In a lot of ways. So needless to say, Kirkwood went through some tough times. And then in the 1970s, 1980s, you had civic neglect going on.
And even beyond, say, redlining, there was just a lack of investment.
There was. And throughout this time, Kirkwood did not really get developed the same way some of the other neighborhoods might have. Grant Park and Candler Park, Lake Claire, which was right around the corner from it, becoming its own thing. But also you had an abundance of crack cocaine during this time too. And Kirkwood has a famous name that's not great called Crackwood during this time. Not Kirkwood, Crackwood. There was a couple residents who had built, local farms to be able to help families through these trying times. And
not like big acreage farms, like using any land that they had, like a double lot.
Exactly.
To build a farm.
Exactly.
To help community people.
Yeah. And there's this really good article written by Josh Green about Anna Thornton, who is one of the, labeled as like the strictest parent in Kirkwood and all of this stuff, right? And they lived off of Warren Street. Mm-hmm. And she's also been known to like police the neighborhood. Like she would be caught with a pair of binoculars, like running these, running the drug dealers down and stuff within the neighborhood, which is an awesome, badass thing to imagine, right? Not until really major change within the 1990s.
The feeling among Atlanta people in the 90s overall, if you lived in town, was kind of that sound of so many people leaving the city and moving out of what we considered cool in-town spots had reversed.
Yeah.
And you now had people actually in popular culture in Atlanta feeling like it was cool and hip and awesome to move in town. And that was a big shift.
And we talked about development not really happening and hitting Kirkwood a lot. Well, it kind of made it the perfect neighborhood to go and get a historic bungalow because those were largely untouched. They were largely unrenovated, right? So,
pulled up the carpet and there were the beautiful hardwood floors.
That's right. That's right. And then in 2000, Drew Charter School opened. Was a major draw for new families moving to the neighborhood.
And that was also around the time that Eastlake Meadows was raised.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yes. And that's right around the corner as well. And then the housing stock is larger homes. You know, they were made for middle, upper class. So you have families that can move there and really start to feel, like they've got a settled place to live. And then, over the time in 2009 became a national registered, a national historic district. And
it became on the National Historic.
They became on the, yes, thank you. That was a tongue twister for me. But what's unique about that is because it had this disinvestment and because it didn't have these houses bulldozed and turned into something else, it instantly became the largest historic district in the state of Georgia.
Which is interesting because the Kirkwood Business Owners Association, I hear, is the largest business owners association in the city.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, they put up a hell of a wine stroll.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on in Kirkwood. During the crash of '08 and the subsequent years that followed, what we witnessed with a lot of in-town neighborhoods was they had received enough critical mass of investment prior to 2008 that they were able to kind of hold their ground to some extent. And other neighborhoods didn't quite have that fate. I would put Kirkwood in the latter category. There were a lot of foreclosures, a different level of foreclosure activity south of the tracks where Kirkwood is, as opposed to, say, Lake Claire or just north of there, or even to the east. If you go out to like some of the areas around Eastlake Golf Course and stuff like that, or in the city of Decatur. The city of Decatur pretty well flatlined.
Yeah.
And Kirkwood is a stone's throw from the city of Decatur, and it was really hit hard. And so not that long ago, right? You look at like 15, 16 years ago of this really major event happening in terms of home values and what it means to own a business there or live there. And to see Kirkwood today is a really amazing transformation in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it is. And the median, sales price for real estate there is over $750,000. That's 82% higher than most of the U.S. So to go through those different transitions and to come and be in the place it is today is amazing, but also it went through challenges, right? And I think maybe it grew stronger because of that. I mean, Kirkwood's a pretty proud neighborhood, and if you live in Kirkwood, you obviously love Bessie Branham Park and things that the community around you. We should talk about commercial districts because part of that national registration was largely because it does have a lot of commercial properties. One of those being the old Pullman Yards.
That's a very famous part of Kirkwood.
It is.
Movies being filmed. If you were a graffiti artist in the past couple decades, you probably tried to get in there.
Yep.
Photographers loved it. Now it's been developed quite a bit and you've got all kinds of acts and events, but what are some of the movies that have been filmed there?
Baby Driver, one of the Goosebumps or something like that.
Did a lot of Goosebumps.
Hunger Games, I think, was there as well for some scenes. But the cool thing they do now is they do all these like large installations, like almost like art installations that you can go and
Embodies exhibit.
Immersive experiences. Yeah. So it's a huge space. It's really cool. They've also developed Pratt stacks along, to be able to extend the affordability side of it.
Well, I believe there are some micro units, like 50 micro units that have been approved, like Durant downtown.
Yeah, and Bryant's building.
Bryant is located right there in the old gas station.
It is. Yeah. It's right over top of, what was there? It was a barbecue spot, Mama's.
I don't remember what was there before that.
It was like a barbecue spot or something like that. It is right downtown. And there's even like an AI feature. I forget what they were really mentioning about that, but I did notice that there was like a AI sort of feature within it. But
you kind of have to mention Langford's Barbershop.
Yeah. Well, Langford's Barbershop, is that the old post office?
I thought the post office kind of looked like had been there for a while, but maybe that building is the old post office. But Langford's has been around had been a neighborhood staple.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe a Halls is what it was called prior to that. But there are a lot of those buildings. I mean, look at the precinct that's there, the all granite precinct, Zone 6.
Zone 6.
Yeah, that used to be the Masonic Lodge, right?
And Zone 6 is infamous. I mean, it kind of speaks to the difficult past a couple decades ago there. People would reference whether or not they lived in Zone 6.
That's right.
And it wasn't something, I mean, you didn't wear it proudly. You kind of wore it as, hey, I'm tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. We live here. Yeah. And that's not the case now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But and Pullman Yards too, we didn't mention this, but it started and was opened by Pratt Engineering, and they were in and developed some level of goods for World War I, and then or I guess not necessarily goods, but guns and stuff that blows stuff up. Yeah. And then Pullman took it over, and they were the Pullman passenger train cars. So it was
those are fancy train cars, or the ornate ones that you think of when you think of an old passenger train car, the Pullman car.
Yep. So lots of that's kind of where they went to be serviced, or put built and put back onto the track and taken to wherever they needed to go.
So I mean, if you think about Kirkwood, it's close to the Carter Center, to downtown Atlanta, to major interstates, to the actual public transit line that we have in terms of public transit. It's easy access to Emory and CDC. It is a really well-positioned community with Cohen Park, Bessie Branham Park, Pullman Yard, a lot of vibrant downtown area. You can walk if you want to there. You've got Drew Charter School, and there's so much around Kirkwood that it's really a great place to be.
Yeah.
And it's really sad to me that something that fantastic had such a hard time after the Great Recession, but it's come back so quickly.
Yeah.
What do you think if you had to describe Kirkwood to somebody today in a word, how would you describe?
To me, it's almost just use the Atlanta motto, resurgence, right? Like how many times, not only, I guess it was burned to the ground to some degree, it was mostly farmland when Sherman burned it, but, it's just gone through these, tough times, and it's come back, and it's
resilient.
It's resilient. That's that's a great word to describe it.
Yeah. And that shows through in its character. What about if it was a genre of music?
Ooh,
you're a musician.
I would definitely go with hip hop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be hip hop. I mean, Zone 6, right? So,
true.
I mean, I would stick with that. What would you say?
I was going to lean on you for the music thing. Sure, I'll go with hip hop.
Go with hip hop. Okay.
Acting better.
Okay. Well, what about this? Is it a porch or a backyard sort of place? Meaning, like, are you gonna?
It feels more porchish to me.
Yeah, it's got smaller lots.
I mean, some of the homes that you think of as like a traditional kind of mid-century, after the war type building homes may not have as many front porches, but the community feels like a porch.
Yeah. It's very similar to Oakhurst in that design, who has a porch fest,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You would get to know your neighbors if you lived there, unless you didn't want to.
I guess so. Well, coffee or bar type of neighborhood?
Maybe a coffee martini. No, I'm just kidding. Not martini. I think of both.
I do.
It's got a good coffee vibe, and you've got soberish there if you want some edibles or something like that.
Spot. Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't really put that hard into one camp or the other.
See, I always think of coffee.
I mean, I drink a lot of coffee in Kirkwood for sure.
Yeah. Well, what would you say was one of the biggest misconceptions about Kirkwood?
That's a great question. Maybe the fact that it's the largest historic district. To me, Kirkwood doesn't feel, I know it's on the National Registry. It doesn't feel like a historic district.
I agree
So
with that.
maybe that's kind of a misconception.
Yeah, on research, I was like, really? I could see how some of the houses would be, but I never really thought that Kirkwood was.
Everybody loves the home on Howard and Trotty. You know, a lot of people take pictures there. We've shot video with that home in the background, as well as just up Howard. If you haven't been to Kirkwood and you want to, make sure you go north-south on Howard.
Yeah.
And
watch for other cars. Not the easiest one to drive on. It's kind of like Wiley Street or something. But that was the model home for that neighborhood. That's actually
and then on Kirkwood Road as well. There's some really historic homes there, right in downtown Kirkwood.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What's the most Atlanta thing about Kirkwood?
I would just say Hosea Williams. Like, that's the name of the main road that, at least for somebody in my generation, that I heard a lot about Hosea Williams growing up. You know, he was always in the news, and we didn't have 18 different ways to get information. Everybody watched the news, and it was, feed the hungry, and, especially around the holidays and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'll say mine's probably more so related to, I feel like everybody's got a story that they could tell, that the people that live there, about old Kirkwood, like, back in my day, sort of. Yeah, that feels like the Atlanta thing.
Yeah.
But who is this neighborhood for?
I feel like somebody that wants community, that wants to walk to the coffee shop, have some cool food that's not a chain restaurant close by, needs access or wants access to the city. It's served by 2 MARTA stations, really.
Yeah.
Kind of on either corner of the neighborhood. Easy access to Decatur. I mean, if you're an attorney that works in DeKalb County, you can get to the courthouse super easy.
That's true.
If you're a physician at any of the Emory and CDC and all that, that's great. It's still a home that, the price point is high now. So, I mean, you need to have a job that gives you enough money to pay to live there. So it feels more like professional type people. And I would say it's a mixed bag on whether I would expect to see them with kids or not with kids. No, I think that's the thing. Kirkwood went from almost all white to almost all African-American to now kind of 50-50. I think that's what the demographics of Kirkwood are now. I think there is...
I would say it's mostly white now, but yeah.
Maybe I saw some incorrect information. I thought it was like 50-40-10 or something like that.
Well, right below it says 49% white, 35% black, 9%.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was seeing. Yeah. So it's not skewed tremendously like it has been in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you wrap up this Kirkwood episode?
Kirkwood has so many stories and so many different sides to stories and history that to be able to speak on this, just know that we're doing our best. The people who were obviously going to troll us about, this is wrong or this is,
Well, there's just so much more we could cover about Kirkwood.
We could sit here for hours and talk about Kirkwood. But it's a wonderful place to live today. It's always been a sought after neighborhood one way or another. And it's just got a really good little downtown. It's got a great sense of community. And it shows up year round in their different festivals. And you walk the streets and you feel a sense of community.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time on ATL All Things Local.